Thank you, Ms. Sewell. Your comments are well taken, and look forward to working with you on that. Recognize Mr. Beyer from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much, and thank all of you for being here. I'm, again, with you, Mr. Chairman, and my friend, Ms. Sewell. I'm very impressed that everyone here cares about this deeply, and that it affects every one of our districts. Even, I have one of the wealthiest districts in the country, Northern Virginia, and yet there are huge pockets of poverty. You know, the schools in Mason District, 90% of those kids are Title I. And I am a little confused about the hearing, but it turns out the Biden administration is not actually planning to apply the supplemental poverty measure. That should be a relief to everyone here. And on this notion of the incentive to go to work, the incentive to stay home, I was privileged to have my mom stay home and raise the 6 kids. I do think that the child tax credit, by definition, goes to parents, mostly mothers, and those people who would drop out of the workforce to stay home and take care of their kids. I think we have to recognize that there is a balance there between the enormous advantages to having a mother stay home raising her children versus a mom that's rolling in at 6:30 at night exhausted, and the kids are latchkey kids, et cetera, et cetera. And we, as we push for work requirements, I think we miss out on the challenge of having one-parent families, no-parent families, families where the parents aren't around at all. Ms. Mogg, you mentioned the cost of child poverty between $500 billion and $1 trillion, largely due to lost productivity. And there are several key programs which we talked about. One I want to focus on particularly is SNAP, because we're redoing the 5-year agriculture bill. There have been a number of Republican amendments already to make SNAP benefits ever harder to access. 5 or 6 times a year, I'll work the food banks in Northern Virginia. And the lines are sometimes, you can't see the end of the line, especially down near Fort Belvoir, where these are mostly soldiers and their families standing in line. How important is it for us to look at things like SNAP as part of the overall addressing poverty in a meaningful way?
Research we did at the Urban Institute suggests that these programs are interconnected, and so we ought to be supporting the whole child. Analysis showed that if we gave better access to SNAP, maybe increasing teen benefits, increasing per child benefit in the summer, and increasing overall allotment can substantially reduce poverty.
Yeah. And let me also I'm not sure who to ask this question to, but Ms. Mogg, let me just stick with you. It seems to me from a poverty perspective, the real challenge we have is that people make too little money, that you have an awful lot of people working full-time. I spent a lot of time in Southwest Virginia, where there are a lot of jobs, and they're jobs that are all going begging, but they all pay $7.25 an hour. And we're pushing them up to some to $8 and $9. And how do you ever raise a family on that or not be dependent on government transfer payments? I had the extraordinary privilege of being U.S. Ambassador to Switzerland for 4 years, where there was virtually no poverty. You know, the embassy Marines always have the Toys for Tots program. They stopped it because they couldn't find any kids to give it to. But when I left in 2013, the minimum wage was $48,000 a year. So my Republican friends reasonably hate the transfer payments, taking from the wealthy and giving to the poor. And it's a great source of structural discord in our country. What if you didn't have to have transfer payments because we paid people a living wage? And we stay away from all that too much. But
if jobs pay enough and they allow people to cover their child care costs and their basic needs, then people are more able to go to those jobs to work. So it's absolutely a way to lift people out of poverty. And interestingly, it would lift you out of both SPM poverty and OPM poverty if you had higher earnings in your household.
Yeah, and I think it's also really important to note, there's, again, a study last week that the average Fortune 500 CEO makes 399 times the average income of his other employees, not the least paid, but the average of the rest of his employees. The money is there, the resources are there. We're an extraordinarily wealthy nation, but they tend to be concentrated in a few places and not shared with the vast majority of the people that we really care about. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.